It's Query and Company.
I'm going to be keeping you company for the next few hours.
You are not going to believe the company.
This company.
You're going to bankrupt your mama's company?
At least I have the radio to keep me company.
On 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
Tonight's tonight.
And Mendoza takes the snap, wants to throw it, fires it down the field. It's for Elijah Serrani. He makes the catch. Touchdown!
This group has great leadership, intelligence, and character. And they're extremely close. While all of our teams at the end of the year have ended up really, really good, I think this team has some special qualities in their ability to go on the road and win close games.
Three receivers, two near side, one to the far. That's Surratt. Here's the snap. Here's the throw. Catch is made. And a break! Down the middle of the field goes Surratt. Touchdown!
Quarterback playing his best with the game on the line when everything appeared to be down and out.
Mendoza in the backfield, back to throw. Pressure comes again, throws it to the end zone. And the catch is made. Is that a touchdown? Touchdown! Unbelievable! Omar Cooper with a grab, and he put his foot down. It's a score for Indiana.
The best way to accomplish this goal is to really just focus on the football and really just trying to dial it in for this game and treat it as a normal game. Although it's not a normal game, to treat it as one. And although you're going to prepare a little bit more, and although that it's going to externalities are going to pressure it to be a little bit more than a normal game, to really, really keep it in that mindset, in that football mindset, and do my part, my one job out of 22 jobs in offense and defense, in order to give us the best chance to win. Just because I know myself focusing on the job and myself focusing on the present gives the Hoosiers the best chance to win, and I owe it to my teammates, to my coaches, and also Hoosier Nation.
There's been a lot of pro-Indiana hype, a lot of rat poison out there. I think it's time to sharpen the saw now, throw those warm fuzzies out the door, that sentimentalism. It's time to go play a game against a great opponent. When you watch these guys on tape, they really play the game with tenacity, intensity, physical, relentless, get after it. Coach Cristobal's done a great job with that program. We got to have a sharp edge going into this game. You know, you don't go to war with warm milk and cookies.
It's the final countdown.
And so with that, Don Fischer on the call, Kurt Signetti, Fernando Mendoza. In preparation for tonight, it all comes down to this. One game, 4 quarters, and for Indiana football, a national championship hangs in the balance. And yes, in fact, it is as surreal for me to say that as it is for you folks to hear that. Eddie Garrison putting together the show open on this Dr. Martin Luther King Day. Good afternoon to you. My name is Jake Query. Eddie Garrison here as well. It is Query and Company on 93.5, 107.5 The Fan. And while there are other sports to talk about, which we will touch on today, it is essentially now we are into the final stage of this. We will basically treat it as a 6-hour pregame for Indiana and Miami in the national championship tonight for all the marbles in college football. The broadcast will be heard on our sister station, WIBC, beginning at 6:30. But JMV is down at the Diplomat, down with Bullseye Event Group in Miami, Hollywood, Florida, specifically speaking. We will send it to him at 3 o'clock to really ramp things up. But there is plenty to discuss, and I want to begin with this. As I was thinking about the fact that today is obviously a federal holiday, today is a day of remembrance of Dr. Martin Luther King, and the importance of understanding, recognizing, and respecting what that means. And I began to think about, while obviously it is not something that I have ever had to contend with in terms of being a person of color, being a minority in this country. Obviously, that is something that was and still is to this day. You know, I think as a people, we are always striving for the perfect game and the perfect season, the perfect year. You know, those things probably will always elude us. There is an element of human nature that comes with that. But you think about those that blazed the path in terms of sport, those that the Jackie Robinsons of the world, the Bill Russells of the world. And I began to think about, with everything happening today and by that I mean the national championship game and on this holiday, I began to think and reflect on the story of George Taliaferro. George Taliaferro is a name that many of you may recognize the name. Many of you, if you are big Indiana fans, recognize and know the story. But if you don't, think about this. Think about what it must have been like right after the war to be an African American in the state of Indiana, anywhere in this country, realistically, because we had yet to undergo the changes, the conscientious nature, the understanding, the dynamic of the civil rights movement that would be the reason why your banks, your mail, and your federal offices are closed today because of the journey of Dr. Martin Luther King. And that journey also happened for athletes like George Taliaferro, who, while not born in Indiana, grew up in Gary and then found his way to Bloomington to play for the Hoosiers in 1945 until 1948. And this is someone who was as good an athlete, as good a football player as was found anywhere in the United States of America. A three-time, not one, not two, but three-time NFL Pro Bowler once he became a professional player. And upon entry of the NFL, the first black player drafted into the NFL out of Indiana. And while at Indiana, an unbelievable player, a quarterback, a halfback, a defensive back, a kicker, and incredible records, notably as a halfback and rushing totals and All-American status. A three-time All-American. And the most valuable player of the Big Ten Conference and as well for the Indiana Hoosiers in 1945. And in 1945, George Taliaferro helped lead Indiana to their only, to this point, unbeaten season in school history. They played 9 games. They won 9 games. And when you look back at the things that he had to endure, the things that he went through, they tied a game that year as well, by the way. They played 10 games, technically. They were 9-0-1. But George Taliaferro was winning those games for Indiana. He was performing on a team that was unblemished under Coach Bo McMillan. And throughout the course of the week, he could not eat in the dining halls with his classmates. He could not live in the dorms with most students. He couldn't swim in the pool at the Hyper Rec Center on the IU campus. And depending on where they were going, there were hotels that became an issue as well. And yet, faced with that adversity, George Taliaferro allowed for the challenges that were before him, the incredible injustices against him, to drive him. And there have been countless stories told about this man of greatness whose wife went back to school, got her legal degree, became a judge. George, who after his playing career would come back, work for Indiana University, work on boards, become a pillar of excellence. And throughout it, he was driven by the anger that he first felt and the injustices that he faced. But he overcame those to become arguably the greatest and the most significant player in Indiana football history. And winning those 9 games in 1945 was something that Indiana has only done before Curt Cignetti one other time, when they went to the Rose Bowl. Twice in the history of the university, they have won that number of games. And now here they sit on the precipice of a season where they could be 16 and unblemished. Indiana University, as a football program, has played in 1,238 games. 1,238 games. And they have won a whopping 41% of those. Indiana University, as a football program, has played in 1,238 games, and in doing so has never played in a game that is bigger than the one tonight. They have never played in a game that is more significant than what happens tonight in Miami against Miami for the national championship. In 1,238 games, and 59% of those being losses, they can erase a large percentage of the pain, the disappointment, the sorrow, the embarrassment of Indiana football, quite frankly. They can erase so much of that tonight. And that's not to say that if they don't win tonight, that there isn't still that pride. But they can look back at the examples before them. And for that, the example, say, of George Taliaferro, of saying, you know what? The odds are stacked against me. The doubt is stacked against me. The culture and the history is stacked against me. But I believe in myself, said George Taliaferro. I believed each game when I went out that I had to do things the right way and go about it the right way and perform, and that the rest would take care of itself. And yes, maybe it wasn't until he was an older man, or even posthumously now, some 8 years or so after his passing, that we truly can reflect on that. And that is not in any way, shape, or form to compare, which would be the most naive thing possible, the obstacles that a football team in 2026 overcomes versus that of somebody that went through those injustices back in 1945, 1946, 1947, up through the time of Dr. King. But it is a spirit. It is a spirit. It is a belief. It is the fortitude to say, I can't get caught up in what others say or feel. I have to believe in me. And that's what has been so charming and so likable about this Indiana football team. Here is a collection of players. And yes, we can sit here, and I fight this. I do. I fight this part of it. There is part of me deep down that I think to myself, I grew up in Indiana. And when I was 9 years old, we took a family trip to Brown County and stopped by the Indiana bookstore. And I bought a sweatshirt that had on it in arc lettering, Indiana. And what I knew was I lived in Indiana. And here is this place that sells a bunch of stuff that shows that you should be proud of where it is, where you're from. And so I became, and then we drove past, just like in Breaking Away, we drove past Memorial Stadium, and the football team was practicing, and I could see it in that glimpse, that slither, back before it was a closed stadium. You could look down, and I saw the football team. And as a young kid, I became fascinated by the fact that there was a football team that had on its helmet the letter I, and it said Hoosiers on their jersey, and I knew that I was a Hoosier and I was from Indiana. And so I became a fan of Indiana football. And I followed Indiana football. And I watched Steve Bradley. And I marveled at the fact that Dwayne Gunn had gone to the same high school that my sister was going to go to and that I would eventually go to. And I watched Dave Schnell and Anthony Thompson and Ernie Jones and Van Waiters, and then later Trent Green and Vaughn Dunbar. And I saw more often than not a team that got beat. I saw a team that went out there, and more often than not, I loved the fact that they represented Indiana. And as a little kid, I didn't really catch on to the fact that they didn't represent them in wins and losses standpoint very well. But that's not to say that it was a renegade program, because it was not. And then Bill Mallory got there, and things started to take off a little bit. But nonetheless, so there's part of me that has to stave the cynicism of saying, yeah, but how many players on this roster truly understand that about Indiana? How many players on this roster grew up dreaming of playing for Indiana? How many players on this roster went to the bookstore when they were 9 years old and got a sweatshirt that had the arc on it that said Indiana? I have to stave myself from the cynicism of almost this feeling of some sort of emotional superiority because it has this connection to me and the people of Indiana that it may not, that are there because of an NIL check. And then I say to myself, you know what, Jake? You've got to throw that out the window, because here's what you have. What you have is a collection of young people under the guidance of a coach that has an incredible ability to mix confidence with X's and O's, with simplicity, and allows all of those players, whether they are from Christopher Columbus School in Miami, whether they are from James Madison and they're a transfer, whether they're from Lawrence North High School, whatever it may be, what Curt Cignetti and this group has done is it has taken a group of players that have come in and said, we know about the 1,238 games perhaps. We know about the 41% perhaps. But what we also know is this. What we know is that collectively, when we come out onto the field and we work together, when collectively we come out on the field and we work together, we are better in unit than we are individually. And it doesn't matter if we're from Ohio or Pennsylvania or Florida or wherever it may be. What matters is that collectively they go out and they become one. And that one is Indiana. And that one that is Indiana has the entire country watching tonight. And on Dr. Martin Luther King Day, the example is going to be set for everyone that tunes in their television tonight. They're going to see a group that is showing that we are better when we perform collectively than we are when we perform individually. And there have been great football teams over the years, in college, in the NFL, whatever it may be. There have been great teams that have had great players, maybe even 2 or 3 or 4 great players, and the talent of the individual players sometimes carries even if there's not uniformity. But that's not the case with this Indiana football team. They have great players. They have the best single performance over the course of the season of anybody in college football in 2025, the Heisman Trophy winner. They have an unbelievable linebacker in Aiden Fischer that can look over things, call out plays, read what's going on, communicate, a quarterback on the defense. They have a corner in D'Angelo Pons who came from James Madison, who bought into that belief, who said, I'm here because I want to show and I want to let the guys know that we have a way of doing things at JMU that we're bringing to Indiana, and if you follow my lead, if you follow the lead of Coach Cignetti, if you follow the lead of what we're going to do, then we have green pastures in front of us. Just like when he anticipated against Oregon on that first play. Follow my lead on the first play of the game. I'm going to intercept the ball with nothing but green pasture ahead of me and a touchdown. And we're never going to look back. They have great players like Elijah Surratt, who was totally overlooked in high school. Not one person calling his phone. And now he's going to work his way into the NFL draft, presumably along with Fernando Mendoza this year, even though he's probably going to hear his name a round or two after Mendoza does. They have great players across the board. But the thing about this team, the thing about this product, the thing about Curt Cignetti saying right there that of all the teams he's had, this particular team, this team is a collection of individuals understanding that it is about working with one another. It's about knowing your job, just like Fernando Mendoza said right there, but also understanding and knowing that the person next to you knows how to do their job. And that while it might be easy sometimes to go about and do everything from an individual standpoint, not worrying about your fellow man, in the case of Indiana, everything clicks when everyone is worried about and working with what their fellow man is doing. It is the ultimate lesson that can be had, and there probably is no coincidence in the fact that this team is going to be on this stage on this particular day. And yes, 1,238 games. I haven't seen all of them. I've seen a lot of them. Of the 1,238, I don't know the number that I've seen in person, but it's a high number. What I know is this. What I know is that whether you are a fan of Purdue, Ball State, Evansville, Butler, Notre Dame, Wabash, DePaul, Earlham, Manchester, Huntington, Indiana State, Franklin, Hanover, University of Southern Indiana, what I know is this. Tonight, we should all be able, and I understand it. I get the fact that Purdue fans are like, this guy, there's no way I'm doing that. I get it. You don't have to outwardly do it. You don't have to grab pom-poms. But in the back of your mind, deep down in your subconscious, When you turn it on tonight, you can be that 9-year-old kid that simply saw that ARC sweatshirt in the bookstore and said, this is a team that represents where I'm from. Because this team represents what we should hold dear no matter where we're from, no matter what walk of life, no matter what theological basis, no matter what it is. This team holds and exhibits what it is that we all should strive for. And that is going out, having a game plan, executing it, being disciplined, being prepared, and looking out and working together. And that's why I say tonight, I hope everybody can soak it in and enjoy it, and it's going to be special because I never thought I would say it. The Indiana Hoosiers are playing tonight for the national championship, and I think they're going to win it. Even if they don't win it, I'll go back to Norman Dale, Gene Hackman, whatever you want to say. I don't care what that scoreboard says. In my book, you're going to be winners. That's the cheesiest line in the history of Hollywood, but there's an element of truth to it tonight. And it doesn't mean that it makes you feel better tomorrow if Miami, who is a very, very stout opponent, is able to beat them. But I know half the state of Indiana right now is down in Florida. I know that half the people that I grew up with are down in the Miami area. And it is a sea of red all over South Beach. It's a sea of red all over Miami. It's going to be a sea of red at Hard Rock Stadium. And it's awesome. It is a celebration of this state, this culture, and a football program. And yeah, sure, the cynic in me says, half the people, Jake, didn't even know this team existed until 5 years ago. I don't care. I don't care. Better late than never in finding out what it is that's great about sport. And this team tonight, it is going to be a great display. And I truly believe that it's going to be one of celebration, but we shall see where the chips fall with that. Eddie Garrison here as well. Eddie, you are wearing your Indy hat. I thought maybe you'd be wearing some IU swag today, but nonetheless, a big one tonight, and I know that you also are fired up for it.
I'm very fired up, Jake, and I'm following the tradition. I cannot break the superstition in me. I will wear my typical gray hoodie that I'm wearing right now, and then later I will change into my IU attire, the same IU attire that I've worn the last 3 weeks. And then I will be back here in this same exact studio producing the Pacers game tonight. I'll have 2 ears on the Pacers, 2 eyes on the Hoosiers.
Love it. Love it. And I'm telling you, it's going to be an electric evening. It just simply is. Now, it was not, and we'll talk about this intermittently over the course of the day. Reality is the NFL playoffs, it was a great playoff run so far. To this point, there have been great games, and last night it was capped by a great one. I know disappointing for the Bears, but there's a lot to unpack with that as it relates to the Colts. Chappell join us with that. But when we come back, he is the voice of the Hoosiers. He has been on the mic for a lot of those 1,238 games, and tonight he will call the opportunity for the 4th time, actually the 5th. For the 5th time in his career, he will call a national championship game involving the Indiana Hoosiers. And Don Fischer, the voice of the Hoosiers, joins us next. He has done this before in terms of calling a national championship game for Indiana. He did it in 1976, 81, and 87, again in 2002. But now on the football side of things, the voice of the Hoosiers, Don Fischer, joins us on the Java House Peel and Pour guest line. Don, it is an awfully nice day to be an Indiana Hoosier.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that, Jake. It's special. There's no question. Although my location as we currently speak is in a hallway of which at one end is a female's restroom and the other end is a male's restroom. But it's the only place I could find it was quiet in this hotel.
Well, I'll bet. You know what, Don? Here's the thing. The population of Indiana is somewhere around 7.5 million, something I'm guesstimating off the top of my head, 7.3 million of which are within a 20-mile vicinity of you right now, correct?
I would bet money on it.
Hey, let's get to this, Don. You know, I was just talking in the open about this, and this team, and I say team, it's interesting that in the year that Indiana for the first time would have in their trophy case the award for the best individual in a college football season in the Heisman Trophy with Mendoza, that it would come in a year that it is my belief this is the greatest team in terms of collectiveness. That's not to take anything away from other teams, but this is just a remarkable team effort in terms of guys working in unison with one another. Is it even a stronger bond than it was, say, a year ago when Curt Cignetti first got here?
I don't think there's any question about it. You're still going through the growing pains of a first-year coach and first-year players and transfer portal guys that were blending in with the guys from the previous program, those kinds of things. But you can tell the way this team has played this year, how close they are as a team, and how much each of these guys really, really enjoys and feels like these other guys are going to be friends for life with them. I mean, yesterday they get through the walkthrough at a different stadium. They're literally out there after they get done. They wrap things up, and they were all hugging one another and talking about the fact that this is our last practice together. And it was amazing and very emotional for these guys, too.
You know, Don, and Holly Rowe that was there for ESPN, she was, like you, she was emotional in talking about witnessing that, right? And I think that there is a great lesson that all of us can have. I mentioned that earlier in seeing it's about coming together for a common goal. And here they are one game away from that goal. That's not to say that if they come up short tonight that it was a failure. I don't mean it that way. But,
right.
You know, I'm curious of this. A couple of things just in previewing this game. First off, that is, you have been around this. Did they treat this week in terms of, you know, there's so much going on externally. Did they treat it, did Curt Cignetti, from a scheduling standpoint or operative standpoint, treat it any differently than the other weeks of the season?
No, they did not. I mean, it's treated a little bit differently simply because the obligations that the coach and the players have from the media. But from any other perspective, no, it was treated exactly the way every other ball game this year has been treated right through these college football playoffs. And that's one of the keys to why Curt Cignetti is such a terrific coach and why he is so valuable in the sense of how he goes about treating his players and the things that they do, because it's a consistency thing. It's doing all the right stuff, trying to keep the rat poison, as he calls it, and the warm and fuzzies, all of that stuff away from the program as much as possible, which is almost impossible these days, as you know, with social media and those kinds of things. But they keep this, the way he goes about it is in such a tremendously consistent way, number one, and the expectations are the expectations, and they are every single day the same. And without question, right now, I think that's one of the reasons the bond of these players is such a huge one. And one of the reasons I think they'll win tonight, because I just think they are the best team I've ever been around. And I'm talking about team now. I'm not talking about talent. I'm talking about the individuals on this football team and how they blended together as a team.
Don, what things, Don Fischer is my guest, Java House Peel and Pour guest line, the voice of the Hoosiers. In listening to Curt Cignetti leading up to this game, what things have caught your ear of things that he has pointed out about Miami that are going to be Indiana challenges?
talks about the physicality of Miami, how they are, how tough they are physically from a defensive standpoint. He thinks they've got a terrific offensive line. They've got very good talent at skilled positions. Obviously, their quarterback, Carson Beck, has been around forever. So he's concerned about this ball game and in the sense of, what they bring to the table. And there's no question. I think they played some of the most physical football we've seen this year. Aside from the Iowa Hawkeyes, I think they would be probably the most physical team that Indiana will face. So it's going to be very interesting to see how they handle this ball game tonight. If Indiana can put the same kind of physicality back on them, because I think that's one of Indiana's strengths too. I think this defense for Indiana is a very physical, very aggressive one. And the job that Bryant Haynes has done with this team from a defensive standpoint has just been spectacular. So nothing has changed, Jake, from what we've talked about all season long in regard to how this team is going to go about their business and how they're going to play the game tonight.
Don, let me wrap with this. I mentioned earlier, Indiana football has played 1,238 games. Tonight will be the biggest in school history. For you personally, two-part question. The first is, do you get nervous?
Generally speaking, I don't get nervous in the sense of, doing the broadcast. No, I don't get nervous doing a broadcast anymore. I'm past that point. I know exactly what I'm doing, and I do things so much the same way, game in and game out. It's probably boring to our audience in some respects because I don't change anything, and I try not to change anything because I don't want to screw it up if I do. So all I can tell you is I don't really get nervous in that standpoint. I do get nervous from the standpoint that I've been around Indiana for 53 years, and I know what the expectations have been for the most part. And when we've had our most expectations for some things to go right for Indiana, they haven't. But back with Curt Cignetti again this year, they've gone right every single time. So all I can do is I'll be a little bit nervous in that regard, but I'm still believing that this guy is the best coach I've ever been around. And without question, I think they're going to win the national championship.
Now, Don, several people, you know this, I know this, and I know you know it as well. I know what Don Fischer means to Indiana football, to Indiana basketball, just to Indiana sports in general, and to the Indiana sports landscape for IU fans. Don Fischer is synonymous with Indiana athletics for an entire era and generation of Indiana sports. But what does this Indiana football team mean to Don Fischer?
All it means to me in the sense of what we've seen this year and last year is that we finally have a program that has gotten to the level of which we all hope for attainment at some point in time during all these years we've been watching it. So this team, without question, has been the most successful, and it's probably going to be my favorite team of all time.
If they win, will you cry? Please, you need to cry. Can you cry on air? If they win, can you cry on air? I mean, it'll be representation of the entire state. Can you get it done?
Well, here's the thing, Jake. You continue to put these emotional thoughts in my brain. And naturally, therefore, I'm going to blame you if I do cry in the air tonight.
No, don't, listen, it's only natural. That's my point, Don. Like, it is, look, I mean, kidding aside, flippancy aside, I think if you put true serum in any of us, we didn't think until maybe this time a year ago that this was even ever going to be a possibility or something we'd see.
Right.
And here we are, right?
Yep, we're right there at the cusp of it all happening here this evening. And like I said, I mean, look, I had tears coming down my eyes when we won a national championship in 1976. So being emotional at the end of a game is not new for me, especially when you're in. And I'll tell you, the other times that it's happened has been mostly in basketball, because of what you've watched and the kind of perfection that Bob Knight brought to the table as far as the 76 team, and then even winning 2 national championships in 81 and 87. But we've never seen it like this in football. And the last time I really had tears in my eyes from a football perspective was in 1987 when Indiana beat Ohio State in Columbus, and did it when nobody thought it could happen. And they'd lost, I think, 31 or 32 straight ball games to Ohio State. And they beat them in Columbus that day, and they carried Bill Mallory off the field. And I didn't cry, but I literally had tears running down my cheeks.
I think that was 38-10. I could be wrong in the score. But the two guys that were teary-eyed at the end of that game, Don Fischer and Earl Bruce. We know that much. That much we know, right?
Mine were happy tears. His were not.
His were of despair. That's
day in Ohio State history, if you remember.
I remember. Oh, yeah. I remember it well. Trust me. Don,
Yeah.
I can't wait for tonight and to hear the call. And listen, I hope you're able to soak it all in and enjoy it. I know, obviously, you had to do basketball, and then, you've got to then get out of there fairly quickly because you've got basketball tomorrow as well. So it's going to be a busy, busy time, but I think adrenaline's going to carry you through and probably joy as well. But we shall see. But I certainly appreciate the time, as always, over the course of the season.
Thanks for having me, Jake. I appreciate it, bud.
Don Fischer, the voice of the Indiana Hoosiers, who will be on the call tonight. All right, Chap's going to join us coming up at 1 o'clock. And also, we're going to go down to Miami, talk to somebody who's down there at about 1:15, 1:20-ish, somewhere around there. Zach Osterman going to join us 2 o'clock today. So still plenty of discussion, plenty to get to on this National Championship Monday for the Indiana Hoosiers on Query & Company, 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. Stars will be bright tonight, and we'll see if Fernando Mendoza can be the star for Indiana. Hoosiers Hurricanes tonight, pregame 6:30, our sister station WIBC. Pacers and Sixers tonight, 7 o'clock from Philly. And fitting, I guess, that an Indiana team would be in Philly, where Indiana last, of course, completed an undefeated season in basketball in 1976. Football team tries to do it tonight. We did this when Purdue made their march to the championship game against Connecticut in basketball, and should offer the same today, and that is this. The telephone number to this radio show is obviously 317-239-1070. 317-239-1070. And if you would like to, I would love to know who it is that, whether it be yourself or someone else that you know that is a long-standing, long-believing, and often suffering Indiana football fan, whether they are still with us or with us in spirit. If I would love to know of somebody that has the story that you're saying, you know what, this is why I want Indiana to win. For those that don't have a rooting interest, I would love to use this show over the course of today to give people someone that they're then happy for. You know what? I'm a Texas A&M fan, but I'm watching that game, and I heard a guy on the radio today say that his grandpa went to and sold tickets and sold Cokes, whatever it might be. If there's somebody you know that you would like to shout out, so to speak, like, for example, Charles sends me a message and says, hey, Jake, it is my son's birthday, Lucas. Lucas is 13 years old today. So, Hoosiers by 13. All right, Charles. Charles and Lucas, we'll see, right? But I know a lot of you have people like that. I was thinking the other day, and I was a little bit disappointed in myself that it took me this long to have the epiphany. But over the years, Bob Jenkins, who was the radio voice of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway Radio Network, the chief announcer. He also, of course, did television for the Indianapolis 500 for ABC, ESPN, and the IRL and IndyCar days. And literally the nicest, kindest, least ego person you could ever ask for. Bob Jenkins of Liberty, Indiana. Diehard Indiana football fan. And each year at the beginning of the year, he would always kind of joke like, this was the year. And Bob always said when it came to being at the racetrack, he was just a fan that was lucky to be there. And that when it came to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, that it was always just a great day, a great place to spend the day. And as Bob looks down today, I hope he sees that Miami's a great place to spend the day. And I hope he's able to soak it all in. All right, we're going to get some shout-outs here. We'll begin with Tyler. What's up, Tyler?
Hey, how you doing?
I'm well, thank you.
Yeah, I have been a lifelong Hoosier fan since I'm 31. I started when I was 3. My stepdad and his dad got me into it. His dad passed away in 2023, and we buried him in a crimson casket and his IU tie that he wore, and he got me into it, and he's not here to see it, but I think ever since he passed away in 23, he's had a hand in this run. So go Hoosiers, and rest in peace, Ed.
Now, what's his name? Ed, you said? What's his last name? Tyler dropped off. All right, Ed. Hoosier fan Ed. Jim is up next. I'm saying we're giving tribute to Ed.
Gotcha.
Jim is up next. Hi, Jim.
Hey. I was wondering, didn't the Colts win down there in Miami the Super Bowl?
Bingo, baby. And here's the thing, Jim. And they also lost one down there, by the way, but we're not going to talk about the New Orleans game. Yes, the Colts won their Super Bowl in Miami, in that stadium, and they won it in a rainstorm. Now, it rained just before the Rose Bowl kicked off. It rained just before the Peach Bowl kicked off. So if there's rain in the forecast in Miami, which I don't think there is, but if there is, Jim, that's good news, right?
Yeah, I didn't know if it was open stadium or they closed it or what.
It is. It's an open stadium. Well, it's got it's like the old Cowboy Stadium, but yes, open stadium.
Yeah, I hear that. Well, I appreciate it. I listen to you guys all the time.
Well, Jim, you and my mom, that's two people, and it's much appreciated. But yes, they are, in fact, playing in the same spot as where the Colts won the Super Bowl. Bill is up next. Bill, what's up?
Hey, it's actually Joe. But, first-time caller. Really enjoy your show. You just seem like a regular dude. I just always wanted to get on with you. Obviously rooting for the Hoosiers. One NFL thing I just wanted to mention, not to beat a dead horse, but seeing Sean McDermott get let go in Buffalo after they go to countless playoffs, championship games, almost to Super Bowls, and it's not good enough for him. What I would give to have ownership that set the bar higher, to keep Ballard and keep just recycling to try to win 8 games a year is just beyond me. Kudos to the Bills. I feel bad for that fan base. I think they deserve to win as well, and I just wish we could have the same type of expectations. Really appreciate you taking my call.
I appreciate it, Joe. And yes, in fact, I'm an average Joe, no question. But I appreciate that compliment. And yeah, Sean McDermott, 5 divisional titles and out. And I did think, and we'll talk about this with Chap, there are a number of areas where I think the Colts were exposed a little bit over the weekend. And we'll get into that with Chap just about 10 minutes from now. Paul's up next. Paul, what's up?
Hey, go Hoosiers.
Now, Paul, how old a fella are you?
I'm about to turn 40 in March 16th, but I wanted to just say, last year when Indiana was on a tear, and we went 10-0 for the first time in school history by beating Michigan. I was there that day with my wife and our 9-week-old baby girl and my in-laws, and it was so much fun. And my in-laws, they're IU grads, and my father-in-law joked at the end of that game. He said of all the games he had been to at IU, that was the first one that he was ever there, and they won. Well, and we joked, but then sadly 1 week later, John passed, and so it's very sudden. But this year we keep watching the games as a family, and we just keep saying, this one's for you, Poppy, every time. And so I just really hope they pull through for my father-in-law. And my dad, too, is also an IU alum. He is still with us. And so all I can say is, Hoosiers!
Hey, Paul, if you don't mind me asking, what's John's last name?
His last name was Smith.
John Poppy Smith. Hoosiers get it done tonight for John Poppy Smith. We will round out with James on our tributes. James, what's up?
Hey, Jake, you're a good dude, man. You're a real good dude. I appreciate it. Hey, all my family's Hoosier fans. I'm 60, and from my mom to my aunts, uncles, grandparents, we've got a pretty deep Hoosier heritage, and this means a lot. This just means a lot to Hoosier Nation if we can pull this thing off, which it's going to be a tough one, but I think it can happen.
Now, James, let me ask you this. How many people are you going to be watching with tonight?
I'll be honest with you, just me and my kids, because my 2 daughters went to IU as well.
Okay,
so
that's cool.
Me, my kids, and my grandkids.
There is a way, by the way, on an ESPN. I appreciate it, James. Eddie, somebody sent me a thing. There's an ESPN alternate channel where you can pump in fish, right?
Yeah. So if you have ESPN Plus, I think this is the only way that you'll be able to access that. I think they call it the hometown radio or hometown broadcast or something. You go to the ESPN app on your smart television, and then you will have all sorts of options. You just have to scroll and find the hometown radio for IU, and ESPN will have Don Fisher, Buck Seward, John Herrick all synced up with the video of the game itself. So you can do it that way.
Very cool. Definitely cool. All right, we come back. Mike Chappell, CBS 4 and WXAN Fox 59. About 15, 20 minutes from now, also, we're going to check in with somebody down at the Bullseye Event Group tailgate that I think this weekend is very special for. We'll get to all that other side. Query and Company here on The Fan. Hey there, Jake Quarry for Love Heating and Air. Love-HVAC.com is the website. 317-353-2141 is the telephone number. Love Heating and Air, been around for over 100 years in central Indiana, talking about the very best in customer service. And a family-owned business, 4 generations deep. And when you have a family-owned business, you know the key to sticking around is making sure that you have great customer service, great product, and a passion about the product and the people. You get all of that with Love Heating and Air, an official Heil heating and cooling dealer. It is cold outside right now. If that furnace is on the blink, keep in mind 24-hour on-call maintenance as well. Love Heating and Air, love-hvac.com.
It's Query and Company.
I'm going to be keeping you company for the next few hours.
You are not going to believe the company.
This company.
You're going to bankrupt your mama's company.
At least I have the radio to keep me company.
On 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
Tonight's tonight. And Mendoza takes the snap, wants to throw it, fires it down the field. It's for Elijah Serrani, makes the catch. Touchdown!
This group has great leadership, intelligence, and character, and they're extremely close. While all of our teams at the end of the year have ended up really, really good, I think this team has some special qualities in their ability to go on the road and win close games.
3 receivers, 2 near side, 1 to the far. That's Surratt. Here's the snap. Here's the throw. Catch is made. And a break! Down the middle of the field goes Surratt. Touchdown!
Quarterback playing his best with the game on the line when everything appeared to be down and out.
Mendoza in the backfield, back to throw. Pressure comes again, throws it to the end zone. And the catch is made. Is that a touchdown? Touchdown! Unbelievable! Omar Cooper with a grab, and he put his foot down. It's a score for Indiana.
The best way to accomplish this goal is to really just focus on the football and really just trying to dial it in for this game and treat it as a normal game. Although it's not a normal game, to treat it as one. And although you can prepare a little bit more, and although that it's going to externalities are going to pressure it to be a little bit more than a normal game, to really, really keep it in that mindset, in that football mindset, and do my part, my one job out of 22 jobs in offense and defense, in order to give us the best chance to win. Just because I know myself focusing on the job and myself focusing on the present gives the Hoosiers the best chance to win, and I owe it to my teammates, to my coaches, and also Hoosier Nation.
There's been a lot of pro-Indiana hype, a lot of rat poison out there. I think it's time to sharpen the saw now, throw those warm fuzzies out the door, that sentimentalism. It's time to go play a game against a great opponent. When you watch these guys on tape, they really play the game with tenacity, intensity, physical, relentless, get after it. Coach Cristobal's done a great job with that program. We got to have a sharp edge going into this game. You know, you don't go to war with warm milk and cookies.
It's the final countdown.
Indiana tonight, national championship. 6:30 pregame, our sister station, WIBC, JMV from Miami, coming up at 3 o'clock. Jake, I can't call in right now, but my dad went to IU for a few weeks, but he left to fight in World War II as a front gunner on a B-24. He's the reason my brother and I are huge fans and why we both attended and graduated from IU. I'm loving every second of this. That is from Doug, whose father is Martin Miller. Martin Miller, another Hoosier for which we are cheering for the Hoosiers tonight. Ron Evan Mitchell played basketball at Warren Central back in 1958. Jake, I inherited my love of Indiana because of my dad, talking about Ron Mitchell. He had an old school 6-foot diameter satellite dish that picked up a bunch of satellites and stations that no one else could, and people in the neighborhood figured it out, and so everyone would congregate at our house on IU game days to watch. Dad died back in 2017 and would be over the moon with what is happening currently. Wish he was here. In a small way, he is. Ron Mitchell, another that we are rooting for Indiana tonight in his memory. All right, joining us now, I almost said Payless Liquors. I'm so used to hearing John. Java House, Peel and Pour Guest Line. The Java House, Peel and Pour Guest Line, of course, javahouse.com. The website, Jake25, the code for 25% off. Mike Chappell of WXIN and CBS 4 joining us on the program. Chappell, let's get right to this. Buffalo making a coaching change. Does that surprise you?
Yeah, sort of. I mean, but it shows you, and it's funny. All this does is fuel my son's anger about the Colts standing pat. Every time that he sees successful or they're successful franchises making changes because it's not enough, it just raises his temperature level that the Colts stood pat. But it just shows you that the management believes because management is still there, believes it's not good enough and something's lacking. The only thing we don't know is, and if you watch Josh Allen play, now he was awful. You just can't have turnovers like that, like we saw last night with the Bears, and really win. But that's not a strong roster around Josh Allen. It's just not. How much did McDermott have to do with that? Was it the GM? That's what you don't know. So to say, they should have done more, well, this is probably the GM's roster. So that's the only thing I would say. But surprise, yeah. I mean, I think is there 8 openings now? 7 or 8 openings. And you're going to tell me there are 7 or 8 candidates? You think, man, I'll take that guy.
Right.
No, there's probably 3, maybe 3 with McCarthy and all that. So that's be careful what you wish for. You want more. Now, with Tomlin, that's different. That by all accounts was his decision, and I believe that. You just don't get rid of Mike Tomlin. I mean, although if you want the definition of mediocrity, in the book, in the dictionary, his picture's there. If we're going to be honest about it,
I mean, he's been Marvin Lewis for 10 years, right?
Well, yeah, and I go back further. Jeff Fisher,
yeah, good one too.
7 and 9, 8 and 9, or 8 and 8, and all that. So, but I understand striving for more. They've Buffalo's got the new stadium online. Is it next year or the year after? Whenever it is. But be careful, and it's funny. I think I saw that one of the guys they might consider is Brian Dabo, who was a flaming failure with the Giants, but was credited for really lifting Josh Allen, his early development. So yeah, but this just shows you the lack of patience around the NFL, except for here. But I come back to the fact that there's not a pool of candidates you think, man, I can't wait till we get this guy. You get a couple more guys off the market, and then you're looking for that Ben Johnson, the hot coordinator who's going to translate, and that doesn't happen. For every Ben Johnson, there's an Aaron Glenn. So just be careful what you wish for.
Chap, I thought this weekend, and then let me tell you the epiphany I had, and then you tell me if I'm being sports radio hot take guy and not speaking soundly, okay? I'm looking at the teams that are remaining. Denver, and I know Bo Nix is hurt and done, but, Denver, a team that a couple of years ago was at the depths of the AFC, stood by their coach, but then drafted a quarterback that the coach wanted and built with him, and Bo Nix has been really good, and they've got a good roster. Obviously New England, the same. New England went through some lean years there, but Drake May, they drafted him. They got a coach that fits it, and boom, there you go, right? Then you look at the Rams. The Rams went to the Super Bowl with Jared Goff and decided that they needed to go one step further, and they were aggressive in getting Matt Stafford. And then, Seattle built a really good roster and then found Sam Darnold, who has been a good answer for them, and we'll see whether or not midnight strikes for them. But my point being, it seems like you look, and there are countless examples of franchises being proactive, and the Colts are reactive. The Colts are always like a half a day late, and they're reactive, and they're usually slow to react, and they're not proactive enough. Now, is that me being just a cynic, or is there some truth to that?
Probably a little bit of both. I don't know if it was reactive to go out and get Daniel Jones, because there really wasn't a better option. There really wasn't. Justin Fields, people like that, really. Jameis Winston, is that what you wanted? And for 10 games, devil's advocate, for 10 games, they had Sam Darnold. They were on the Sam Darnold track, and then, it all went to hell in a handbasket. So, but no, and Chris Ballard mentioned this when we talked to him, what's it been, 10 days ago, whatever it's been, that whenever you're always chasing a quarterback, you're just always, you're always not getting it right until you get it right, as dumb as that sounds. And as I've always mentioned, the problem with chasing quarterbacks is your roster gets older. They've absolutely wasted 3 elite seasons by Jonathan Taylor. They have. Quentin Nelson's been a zillion-time All-Pro. Well, what do you got for it? So that's the problem. And if you look at the team still going on, they've got quarterbacks who are working for them. But no Joe Burrow, no Josh Allen. Of course, Mahomes is hurt. So, but I tell you, Matthew Stafford is making his case. He really is, and that was a great move. So to say they're reactive, they have been, because they reacted and got Carson Wentz. That I admit, I thought at the time, hey, maybe this guy can be the long-term guy. He wasn't. Matt Ryan was never going to be the long-term guy, and that was a flaming failure. Phillip Rivers was never going to be the long-term. So someone can remind me when they had multiple chances to get that guy. And, maybe right away when Luck retired, I had to go back and look at 2022 or 2020 to see what was out there when they brought Rivers in. But that's the problem. Things have got to come together for you to get the right guy, or you find Brock Purdy, or you find hey, Purdy's a great player. The Niners passed on him like 6 times. The Patriots passed on Brady 5 times or whatever it was. So
I've always said, Chap, and I know my buddy Paul the mailman jumps up and down about this all the time, DeForest Buckner's been a great player, and there's no doubt. I mean, he's been everything that you would want out of a player. No issue there. But they sent a first-round pick away to get him, and it was in a year that had not one but 2 really good quarterbacks in Justin Herbert and Jordan Love. And that's the one that you look at it and you go, they were a half a day late, in my opinion.
Well,
that's where they should have been more aggressive.
I need to go back and look at the timeline, but I'm assuming they'd already signed Phillip Rivers, which that's where you say, well, you shouldn't sign Rivers. You should have targeted one of the quarterbacks. So that, yes, I understand. And in hindsight, everything you're saying is true. And until they get this quarterback thing solved, they're going nowhere. They're going to be what they are, which is not in the upper quartile.
Do you consider a healthy Daniel Jones, the quarterback thing, being solved?
Well, it has to be. Yeah, with the landscape, it has to be. And that's the thing, is they're sort of all in on Daniel Jones. And I've said from the start that once they made the trade for Sauce Gardner, they hitched their wagon to Daniel Jones.
Yeah, they're going to have to be now, right?
Yeah, they have to be now. And we'll see. You're talking about a guy that's finished 3 of his, 7 seasons on IR with, I don't know if it was an ACL and a back, and then this Achilles. And he's really had 1.5 really, really good years.
and the others have been like, you need much more than that. Now, how much of that we can go back and argue how much was that the Giants' ineptitude, and probably quite a bit of it. But yeah, again, if it's not Daniel Jones, then who is it? I mean, again, the way it is, you've got no first-round draft picks, so there's zero chance of moving up to get anybody. I don't care if you trade 3 players, you're not going to get, top 5 or whatever. And is this really going to be that strong of a quarterback draft? I don't know. It's not what everybody said it was going to be. So yeah, it just hamstrings you all the way, and it's got to be Daniel Jones. And again, you're expecting him to be ready by July. You don't know, and I'm convinced as I sit here that when training camp opens, that he'll be eased back in. I don't think he'll be full bore. I just don't think so. So, but if not him, then what do you got? I mean, with all due respect to Riley Leonard, I don't think anyone views him as, well, if Daniel Jones doesn't, work out, we got Riley. And I don't mean to dump on Riley. I mean, he was taken in the 6th round to be sort of the developmental guy, to maybe be a spot starter and a strong backup guy. I think we saw that he's at least that, to where he can go in there short term and probably win you games. Could he have won him a couple of games instead of Rivers? Maybe looking back. But it's just, I look around the league and so many teams. Miami has no idea what to do with Tua. Arizona has no idea what to do with Murray, and they've given these guys contracts, big contracts. So, because I saw who's got to get the big contract next, or the 5th-year option on. Gosh, who was he? He was just on the other day. They got to give C.J. Stroud. You've got to give him his 5th-year option, which you will. It's like $26 million. But then if he doesn't really improve a lot, you're going to give him $50 million a year minimum? No. So, of course, I say no.
I think
you
if anything,
better have plan B.
Chap, if anything, for C.J. Stroud, what we saw is that Houston needs to make sure they have home field advantage and not play outdoors in brutal weather. You know what I mean? I'm not saying that was the reason, but, man, that was brutal.
Did I see they're the only team that's winless in divisional games since the Super Bowl, and that takes in a lot of crappy teams, the Jets and all that. So, yeah, and that's not a good thing. It's to when you go on the road and all that stuff. He looked scared, panicked, and made some really bad plays that were either the defense either forced them or he forced them, however you want to look at it. And there's another perfect example. They're wasting an elite defense with those pass rushers and everybody else. And what do you got to show for it? Well, okay, you got a couple of playoffs, or I guess it's 3 straight playoff spots, but that's not what people are in this for. And that's why I understand the local frustration is you're not even getting in and not winning your first round game. You're not getting in. And that's unacceptable. It's just totally unacceptable.
Chap, if we talk to you a week from today, we will be previewing the Super Bowl between what 2 teams?
Oh, the Rams and the Patriots. And I hate the Patriots, but I'm not a big Denver fan either, especially with Bo Nix out. I mean, it's funny. Great trivia thing that somebody put out there over the weekend is that Jared Stidham has a chance to be only the 2nd quarterback to start his first game of a season in the playoffs and win it. Did you see who the only guy is?
Boy, that's good.
It's a really good question.
Wait, his first start ever in the playoffs?
No. His first start of a season was in the playoffs, and he won it.
Hit me.
And he won 2. Frank Reich.
Yeah, okay. I don't know that I realized I knew he was the backup. In one of them, he was down 35 points, right?
That's when he started, and because Kelly was out, and just only had the greatest comeback in the history of the NFL after having the greatest history in the college at Maryland. So I text Frank, and he said, "Yeah," he said, "I kind of thought I had that." He said, "I won 2 that year." I thought, "Yes, you did." So that's the whole thing. it's getting the right guy, and as I guess we go down a different rabbit hole, and surrounding him with the right roster, and Houston hasn't done that, Buffalo hasn't done that, and they're wasting some really quality years from an elite quarterback. The Chargers with Justin Herbert. Holy smokes! If you're building an NFL roster from start, and you threw all these players into a hat, wouldn't you? Among the top 5 guys you take are Josh Allen and Justin Herbert, and yes, Mahomes, and these are guys that just haven't gotten there yet. More so with Herbert than Allen, obviously, but it sort of goes. You've got to have the quarterback to be a serious contender for something, but obviously that's not enough. We saw that in Indy with Peyton. All those great years he had. Remember the Star Wars comments from Jim Irsay?
Multiple Lombardis, baby. Multiple Lombardis.
Fortunately, near the end, he quit that because it just didn't come across right.
Chap, tell me the biggest IU football fan you know. Tonight, when you're watching that game, you're going to be thinking of who?
Bill Benner. Bill Benner. Because I know what he's one of those IU guys that he's been there on those cold, maybe not rainy Saturdays in Bloomington to where they're getting their ass handed to them by Rutgers or Ball State, chirp chirp, and and now he's there and he's going to enjoy it. And I know there's others, but it's funny because my grandson's got an IU shirt. My granddaughter, they had to go out and get her an IU shirt so they can wear it tonight, and they're not. This is what we always argue with people about the importance of sports. This is one of the side products of sports. It just brings people together.
It does. And this team,
and that's like when you're called for Super Bowl or all this. It's just different around the community. It is. It brings people together, and that's what I hope they finish this tonight the right way, and then I can deal with Reggie Wayne being pissed off.
That's right.
But this is a great run.
All right, Chap, we appreciate it. We'll probably talk to you next week to preview the Super Bowl and figure out what happened over the weekend. But certainly appreciate it. Enjoy the game tonight.
Be well, guys.
All right, Mac Chappell joining us on the Java House Peel and Pour guest line. Same place we go when we're talking about Indiana fans. There's a reason I wanted to bring this guy on. You know him on this radio station as J-Law. Jeff Lawrence is his name, but J-Law is what we know him. He's got the Bear Bryant-looking IU hat that he wears everywhere. He appears at J&V remotes kind of like the photographer in The Omen. Every time you turn around, there he is. And he is down in South Florida getting ready for the Bullseye Event Group Weekend Extraordinaire, and he has been down there soaking it in. He joins us now. J-Law, how are you?
Hey, Jake, how are you? I'm doing great. It's some degrees here, so it's a lot better here than there.
Yeah, it's 10 degrees here. Thanks. Okay, you got down there when?
Saturday early afternoon.
Okay, and I want to know, I got a couple of questions for you here.
Yeah.
Tell me what all the events that you've been, like just what all you've been doing to enjoy and soak it all in.
Well, we had a small event when we got here with Bullseye, and then pretty much on our own since then. So John and I have been going here, there, and everywhere up and down the coast. We had some friends that invited us aboard their yacht yesterday, and we hung out there and had a nice seafood dinner that hung out with some same folks at the Airbnb with Isaiah Jones, and his family was there. So I got to meet DJ and talk to him about some stuff going on with the team. And it's all red down here right now. Every place we've gone, though. I mean, it's crazy.
Okay. Now, you attended Indiana, correct? You grew up in Richmond?
Yes. Yep. I graduated in 85.
Okay. And so how many football games would you guess that you've been to in your life?
Oh, good Lord. I've had season tickets for about 15 years and then went to a few games years in between graduating and then. So, I mean, I don't even remember again, 200-300.
So of the 1,238 games that Indiana has played, J-Law has been there for, let's say, roughly 15, 18% of them. And like 5 of those games, he's actually seen victories, right? So you're as diehard as it gets, right?
Okay. Well, when I was there, we won 12 games. And 1 year we won 0.
That was in 4 years. Not just so people listen to know. Not in one season, right?
Yeah, and my senior year we won the first game and tore down the goalpost and took them over to Downhill Apartments.
Nice. Dunhill, man. Dunhill's not there anymore. Those apartments are gone, aren't they?
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, J-Law, here's another reason why I wanted to bring you on. You know, you have been very open about this, which I admire greatly and I respect it. But you've earned and you deserve some R&R and some good sunshine and some good football, not just because of the season ticket dedication, not just because of your loyalty to Indiana, not just because of your hat, but also because it's got to be nice for you to just kind of have something else to focus on for a little bit.
Absolutely.
Can you let our listeners know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. About 3 years ago, I was diagnosed with prostate cancer. Over the years, my PSA blood tests I got every year were creeping up. And at my age, I'm 62, soon to be 63. My doctor told me I needed to get a urologist in my life. So went to the folks at Urology of Indiana, Dr. Ramsey, great guy. Did some more blood work, did an MRI, and I had 3 lesions, one of which came back cancerous. So after that, they sent the biopsy off to get some genetic DNA testing and another testing called Gleason. And they go by the Gleason score a lot. And it's a combination of 2 factors, which I'm not sure what they are, but I had a score of 6, which is fine. And my genetic testing came back non-aggressive type. So what I did the next few years was what's called active surveillance. Not a treatment. It's just a monitoring every 6 months with blood tests and usually a biopsy once a year. And then this year, my PSA went up to 12, which was getting the zone of, you got to take a closer look. So we did another MRI and another biopsy. And unfortunately, it came back, and I got the news Thursday night before the Peach Bowl when I got to Atlanta that my Gleason score had increased to 7. So had a pity party for about a half hour with my wife on the phone, but I was down here with buddies and fraternity brothers and had a great time. The game made me not think about anything. And I got a PET scan coming up when I get home, and we'll see what that shows, make sure nothing's spread, and get a plan and go from there. I mean, mentally, I used to have anxiety and depression a lot, but I tell you, Jake, having what I've got, the cancer, has really reset my focus on what's important in life. My anxiety's gone, depression's gone, because I don't worry about stuff anymore, the stuff that doesn't matter. So after the Peach Bowl we won, I called my wife, like, oh, man, I really want to go, but I know I'm low on the totem pole point-wise and everything. She goes, you're going. No matter what it costs, you're going. You deserve it. You need spend some time with friends, and, that's the first time this has ever happened, so you're going to be there. So I knew John was having this thing with Bullseye. I signed up on Sunday, I think, and here I am.
So with that tonight, you're going to the game, right? You guys are heading out. And my understanding is John was telling me the place where, Kyle and Bullseye set you guys up at the Diplomat there is outstanding. You got a bus that's going to take you in about 4:30, and then you got tickets to the game, right?
Yes. Yep. I'm tickets not great. I'm about 10 rows from heaven, but you know what? I'm there. Yeah. That's all that's important to me. Is be there, enjoy it, embrace it, and root the Hoosiers on to victory.
Well, J-Law, the reason I wanted to bring you on is because, I mentioned earlier, sometimes people don't have a rooting interest in a game. And I know that there are people listening to this show that are fans of Purdue or Ball State or Evansville that are probably, at this point, completely fatigued by the IU story. I understand it if you're not a fan of a team, right? And so I always try to give people that don't have a rooting interest. And I think, I talked about Bob Jenkins, who I just thought the world of, and what IU meant to him, and Bill Benner that Chap just mentioned. And, we mentioned John Poppy Smith, people who called in and have relatives. And I think most people that listen to this radio station know of you, but you're more than just a guy with the hat. And you're an example not only of the way to go about things, and I think you represent Indiana football and vice versa, because you go about it with a game plan. You go about it by focusing on the part that matters and taking advantage of the opportunities before you. And that means watching your team play for a national championship. And I hope they win it for you. But even if they don't, I hope that people listening can watch the game with no rooting interest and say, you know what, I'm rooting for that dude J-Law because he deserves to be there and he deserves to see it.
I appreciate it. I mean, between family, friends, and my faith, I've got this thing licked. So I've got a plan. As long as I have a plan, I'm good.
Enjoy it. Be safe tonight. keep an eye on John too. All right.
Yeah, that's a chore.
That's right. All right, man. We'll be hearing from John coming up about 3:00. But that is our buddy J-Law down in Miami with the Bullseye Event Group, and certainly wish him the best. And I'm glad that he's able to be down there, soak it in, and enjoy it.
I do have good news, Jake.
What's that?
JMV successfully connected. We have checked in. John is alive. He is well, and he's all ready to go for 3:00.
So you and I can actually theoretically head out by 10 after, right?
That's right.
Once we make sure that he's up and running.
But here's the thing: do we think JMV realizes he has to go until 6:30 tonight because we have Pacers in action against the 76ers starting at 6:30? So there's no instant replay. There's no Colts programming to get him from 6 to 6:30. Think John knows that yet?
I would bet that he does not. You might have to run that past him.
I'll let James break the bad news.
Maybe you and I are coming back in at 6:30 for a 30-minute stint.
You mean 6:00?
6:00 for a 30-minute stint. All right, we come back. Zach Osterman going to join us down in Miami coming up 2:00. But 239-1070 is the telephone number. 239-1070. I want to know whether it's yourself, whether it's a family member, whether it's somebody you went to school with. Is there somebody that has made you an Indiana fan? Is there somebody that you'll be thinking about tonight? Is it somebody you're watching the game with and they don't realize how much it means to you that you can watch them enjoy this? I would like to know if anybody has those thoughts. And we also will have more thoughts on the news of the day in the NFL as well next. Hey there, Jake Quarry for Game Day Men's Health. You know, we talk all the time on this show about sports and about game plans, coming up with the right game plan, making sure that teams are disciplined and focused. Same guys for you. Look, it's a new year. It's time to get in shape. It's time to start feeling better, and it's time to start thinking about health. Game Day Men's Health can do all of that with clinics in the Indy metro area, including Avon, Carmel, Fishers, Greenwood, and a number of different things, guys, to help you get healthy and feel better and get back in the game. Reclaim your game. Step it up a little bit. I'm talking about testosterone treatment. I'm talking about peptide treatments, ED treatments, whatever it may be. The best thing about Game Day Men's Health, amongst many things about them to love, is the fact that you get an individualized. You don't just go in and they say, here's what you're going to do. No. It is exactly custom made for what you want and what your goals are, and using prescriptions from FDA-approved pharmacies, ensuring safety, efficacy, and the highest standard of care. That is the important part about it, the fact that you are getting the very best care right there at Game Day Men's Health. And again, multiple locations and clinics in the Indy metro area, Avon, Carmel, Fishers, and Greenwood. Game Day Men's Health. Very easy to set up an appointment, a consultation. Find them online, GameDayMen'sHealth.com. The last time Indiana won a national championship amongst the major sports, I should say. I mean, that's no disrespect to other sports. They won it in soccer, but between football and basketball. 1987. Now, I'm not saying that I was a zealot for Indiana, but I could sit here and actually give you verbatim the entire post-game interviews. Off the top of my head, I mean literally. Somebody sent me a thing saying, Ricky Callaway, if they win it, is Ricky Callaway going to say? And yes, in fact, he said, I just want to say hi to Mom, Dad, Jamie back home, Trent. And then he puts his arm up. Yeah. Many years later, I said to Ricky Callaway, I recited that to him. And he said, man, I'd forgotten that Trent was my nephew, or is my nephew. Jamie is his sister, Mom, Dad. Love every minute of it. And I watched the last 8 minutes of the 1987 National Championship game and the post-game celebration every single morning of my last 2 years of high school. I'm not saying that means I'm neurotic, but it was a good luck thing, so I have it slightly memorized. All right, so who are we pulling for tonight? We're pulling for Indiana, but we're doing it in the memory of or in the tribute to or along with, whatever it may be, who. And I don't mean Hoosiers. Who is it that has inspired you to root for Indiana tonight? Rob joins us on the show to talk about that. Hi, Rob. How are you?
I'm doing great, Jake. How you doing, sir?
You know what? I'm fired up.
I am fired up, too. I'm a Benner, so Bill Benner, obviously, is who we're rooting for tonight, because I'm sure he's down there and already doing his fun. But for my father, Larry, who passed away 2 years ago on January 4th, big IU guy, and never got to see IU football at this point, so I'm sure Bill is going to be rooting for Dave and Larry tonight when he's watching the game. And we're all fired up. Jake, I'm an all red, and I can't wait.
Well, Rob, listen, I know how much it means to, and is Larry, so when you say you're a Benner, so your father is Bill and David Benner's brother, correct?
The oldest brother, yes, sir.
Okay, well, listen, I know what IU has meant to not just those guys, but obviously, your grandfather as well. So for all of them, but in particular in this case, Larry, we say go Hoosiers.
Larry was a Sycamore, though. He didn't go to IU. He was the only one that didn't go to IU. He was a Sycamore.
All right, was he a fan of IU?
He was, yes, sir.
I was going to say, otherwise he was kicked out of the family and knowing the Benners. All right, appreciate it, Rob. We got it down for Larry. Up next, let's go to Jim next. Jim, how are you?
Hey, doing great, Jake.
Who are you thinking about?
I'm thinking about my son, Chris Ditto, who played quarterback for IU back in the early 70s, 1973 to 77. And he is down there right now. And I have a special interest there because I grew up in Columbus, Ohio during Woody Hayes days. And I was an obnoxious Ohio State fan until my son went there to IU. And I seen what those young men did and grew and developed under Bill Mallory. They didn't win a whole lot of games, but they became together as a team. And Chris always talks about a team, and if there's ever a team to follow, is the IU Hoosiers right now. It's been really terrific to follow them.
93 to 97 for Ditto. Now, here's the thing, Jim, and I hope to have Chris on in a little bit here. He actually, you talk about Ohio State being a Woody Hayes guy. Chris Ditto had perhaps his finest game against Ohio State, correct? I mean, you want to talk about somebody that as a young guy made a start in a raucous environment against Ohio State and stood and looked toe-to-toe with Ohio State. He did exactly that, right?
Exactly, and he was a redshirt freshman. It was his sophomore year, but it was his first year, his first start, and he had thrown 5 passes in his whole career. It was at Ohio State, the place where I grew up, and they just lost, I think, by 4 points. Chris had 2 TDs, and it was really, really outstanding, terrific. I had to choke back my thoughts at that time, of course, having grown up and gone to that stadium with my dad so many times. But it was a wonderful, wonderful time. It was what sport was about. It was about just giving tough and staying in there. And then Chris had a good career and played a little bit in the NFL. You're going to say you're going to speak with him a little bit?
I told him certainly today or tomorrow. The problem is I don't know. Now I shouldn't tell you this, Jim, but I mentioned him yesterday. I reached out to him and said, hey, I want to get you on today because he's been nice enough to come on several times. And he said, I'll try, but I'm going to be tailgating. Now, I said, you know what? That's even better. We just need like a 3-minute scene of the sights and sounds of the tailgate, right? But he's soaking up every minute of it, and he's with a lot of guys that I know are like brothers to him. enjoying that. And so, therefore, we're going to try to get them, but I certainly understand if they're swept up in the moment. You know what I mean?
Well, I just talked to my daughter in there together at a tailgate about an hour ago. So I will give him a call to ask him to give you a call. It's interesting also because when I was in Ohio, grew up there, I met Woody Hayes when the year Chris was born, 1993, and he signed a football to Chris. See you at OSU in 1993. And that became true. I'm sorry, he was born.
Well,
in
no, I get it. Yeah, we'll see you when you're older. And then, of course, he saw him when Indiana went. And like I said, he had a great game in Columbus, which back in those days was not always easy to do. Totally appreciate the call, Jim, and hopefully we will catch up with Chris. Keith is up next. What's up, Keith?
Hey, Jake. Really enjoy your broadcast. Like the silly questions you ask a lot of times.
You're the one. You're the one, Keith. We appreciate it.
Well, today I'm thinking of my father-in-law, whose name's Joe Milan. He was a doctor down in Bloomington, a general surgeon. And he was a diehard Indiana fan, had season tickets for basketball and football. And so he died, passed away in January. I can't remember the exact date, but it's 2023. So he's about 3 years shy of seeing Indiana football succeed at something spectacular. So I think of Joe. One quick story related to Joe. He was so into Indiana athletics and that when Bob Knight came to Indiana, and I think that's it was his first year, and he was recruiting not Benson, but Quinn Buckner. He had his own private plane. He flew up to Chicago to pick up Buckner and bring him down to Indiana for a visit. So he did things like that a lot for Indiana athletics. So I'm thinking of Joe Milan.
All right, Joe Milan, I got it. Dr. Joe Milan, passing away in January of 23. Appreciate the call. And lastly, one of the guys that, at least for this particular installment of this, one of the guys that I've thought a lot about, because in the time that I've done sports talk radio in Indianapolis, which has been longer than I probably at times even believe, this guy has been as loyal towards Indiana football from day one as anybody. And even in the doldrums of winless seasons and embarrassments and finger snap whispering the fight song and 5 overtime wins over Akron, this guy has stood by him through and through. Turnbuckle Bill, who probably is painting his face as we speak. What's up, Bill?
Jake, thank you for those kind words, my friend. Yeah, I haven't had this kind of nervous anticipation since my son was born 40 years ago.
Yeah.
I'm walking around my house like I was pacing in the St. Vincent's waiting room back on September 9th of 1985. So I'm fired up. I'm ready. I really want I went my first IU football game in 1968, but I watched my first IU football game in 1967. My mom was a professor emeritus in the School of Medicine, IUPUI, speech pathology, and they had a closed circuit broadcast. And people don't realize that back in the 60s, there was one college football game on each week. It was broadcast by ABC. Keith Jackson was always the announcer, and that's all you got. So we had to go see the game on closed circuit TV. Of course, Terry Cole ran off with a couple of 50-yard runs. John Eisenberger, Jade Butcher, Harry Gonzo. They won that game and went to the Rose Bowl. But I want this game to go to my mom and my dad. And my dad taught me how to be a fan. And the things that you said were things that he passed down to me. And I can only quote Jackie Gleason and say, "Oh, how sweet it is."
Bill, what are your mom and dad's names?
My mom's name was Sally, and my dad's name was Bill.
Last name? If you don't want to give last name, I get it.
Bowman.
Sally and Bill Bowman, who I'm telling you, and you know what? I'll tell you what, TB, here's the other thing. Your dad didn't just teach you about being a fan. He taught you loyalty, because I've seen that first and foremost, just the loyalty you show to the radio station, to me, to Derek back in the day, to John, to all of us, and to the Pacers as well. I know what being a fan, you exhibit it every single time I see you, for that matter. And you are one of the guys I've thought about, man. I think about you. I think one time I even saw you wearing ridiculous red and white overalls or something like that. So I'll be cheering for Bill and Sally, and also for you as well, Turnbuckle Bill.
I appreciate it. I want to make two predictions. Number one, Fernando Mendoza will beat them tonight with his legs. He will get 2 to 3 runs that he will accumulate 50 yards in pressure situations and put them into good field position. That is going to happen.
Okay.
And the next prediction I have is the next coach of the Buffalo Bills is going to be Pete Carroll.
Okay, we'll see about that. We'll see whether Pete Carroll, because his age, I mean, at this point, that may be. I think Pete Carroll's a heck of a coach, don't get me wrong, but we'll see if Buffalo. It seems like Pete Carroll and Josh Allen would be a good match, no doubt about that.
I just feel like they're going to promote their offensive coordinator, Joe Brady.
What's
Jake,
that?
I feel like they'll just promote their offensive coordinator, Joe Brady.
You would think they had to have something immediately in place, right, if they're going to make that change with Sean McDermott. I do know this, and this is the neuroticism of the way my brain works. If Turnbuckle Bill's son was born on September 9th, 1985, that means that his son was 2 days old when Pete Rose got his 4,192nd hit off Eric Schau. How I remember that and failed algebra 7 times, I got zero idea. Don Fischer on the call. And that fabulous win against Oregon. And D'Angelo Pons getting things started. He will be on the call tonight. You can hear the pregame at 6:30 on our sister station, 93 WIBC. Kickoff 7:30, Indiana and Miami in the national championship game. Hey, Jake, not only for all my fellow Hoosiers alum, but I want this for my father-in-law, Hoosier Bob Tichenor. I hope I'm saying the last name correctly, by the way, Tichenor. Bob has followed Indiana football since the early 50s when his brother Jack played for IU. Bob and his brothers started TIS bookstore at IU. Man, I loved TIS. Never paid enough, that is correct, for your used textbooks, but I loved them. Jeremiah, longtime listener of this radio station. Jake, for my father who passed away from an MI 13 years ago, I assume that means myocardial infarction, which is a heart attack. He was a graduate of IU and IU Law School. A lot of people, by the way, to their father-in-law as opposed to their father. But no matter who it is that you are motivated by or thinking of tonight, I love the continued shout-outs. Caitlin Clark, by the way, sending a post on the X-Post Twitter, simply saying, like, let's go Indiana football. We are all rooting for you. Eddie, I was thinking about this during the playoffs. You and I made our game predictions, and there was one game there was only one of the three that we agreed upon. Do you remember which one it was?
I do remember. We both took the Houston Texans. And I told you right then and there we would be wrong.
You know, it's funny because I had said every time what did I say about games in New England in the postseason? It's always like rainy, gross, and foggy, and misty, and cold, just ugh. And that's exactly what you had yesterday. And C.J. Stroud, I'm not saying the weather was the part of it, but man, he looked out of sorts. He looked like a guy that had never played in that. I mean, it's not just, I mean, you could sit there and say, like, isn't he from California or wherever he's, somewhere warm? Most guys in the NFL are probably from warmer weather climates, Texas, Florida, California, but that was a poor performance. So, and now you had the Rams or the Seahawks?
I took the Seahawks. You took the 49ers. I took the Bears. You took the Rams.
Okay.
And then I took Denver. You took Buffalo.
Yeah, Buffalo, man. Here's another thing where, and Zach Osterman are going to join us a couple of minutes from now, another area where I'm convinced of the bot farms. I sent simply a post saying how poorly the game was officiated at the end of the Buffalo game. And it turned into, 300 replies, none of which are people that follow me, and all of which were assuming I meant the pass interference. I didn't mean the pass interference. I meant the interception. And as well, the missed safety that would have taken place with the hold in the end zone. I mean, both ways. Terribly officiated game. But I did say that I thought Buffalo got jobbed. I did on that interception.
I disagree.
Okay. What was it called yesterday?
Yesterday, and what play?
The exact same play. The exact same play took place last night, and it was called a catch.
I disagree. There were two different elements of part of the catches that I won't get too far into.
But he had the ball. He had control of the ball. His knee was down, and then he was touched.
The element that's different between Devontae Adams and Brandon Cooks is the fact that Cooks was going to the ground, and Adams came straight down 2 feet, so he had already established the 2 feet. The third element of it for Devontae Adams was tucking it in, and so as soon as he goes down to the ground, he's down by contact. The element for Cooks that's different is he was going straight to the ground, and because of that, he has to maintain possession of the ball through the entirety of the process, and he didn't. That was the only that's the difference between the two.
Yeah,
very, very small details.
I get it.
But there was also a play earlier in the year. Cade Otton was playing Sunday Night Football, the Bucs and the Rams. There was simultaneous possession of the ball. His knee went down. They ruled the interception at the time as well. So there was consistency in that regard.
To me, the bigger thing to me, actually, is also the fact it wasn't even challenged. Maybe it could have been. I don't know.
They reviewed it. All turnovers are reviewed by the booth anyway.
I mean, they did review it because it seemed like all of a sudden it was just boom. It was the possession change. But either way, Zach Osterman down in Miami joins us next.
It's Query and Company.
I'm going to be keeping you company for the next few hours.
You are not going to believe the company.
This company.
You're going to bankrupt your mama's company.
At least I have the radio to keep me company.
On 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
Tonight's tonight.
And Mendoza takes the snap, wants to throw it, fires it down the field. It's for Elijah Serrani, makes the catch. Touchdown!
This group has great leadership, intelligence, and character, and they're extremely close. While all of our teams at the end of the year have ended up really, really good, I think this team has some special qualities in their ability to go on the road and win close games.
3 receivers, 2 near side, 1 to the far. That's Surratt. Here's the snap. Here's the throw. Catch is made. And a break! Down the middle of the field goes Surratt. Touchdown!
Quarterback playing his best with the game on the line when everything appeared to be down and out.
Mendoza in the backfield, back to throw. Pressure comes again, throws it to the end zone. And the catch is made. Is that a touchdown? Touchdown! Unbelievable! Omar Cooper with a grab, and he put his foot down. It's a score for Indiana.
The best way to accomplish this goal is to really just focus on the football and really just trying to dial it in for this game and treat it as a normal game. Although it's not a normal game, to treat it as one. And although you can prepare a little bit more, and although that it's going to externalities are going to pressure it to be a little bit more than a normal game, to really, really keep it in that mindset, in that football mindset, and do my part, my one job out of 22 jobs in offense and defense, in order to give us the best chance to win. Just because I know myself focusing on the job and myself focusing on the present gives the Hoosiers the best chance to win, and I owe it to my teammates, to my coaches, and also Hoosier Nation.
There's been a lot of pro-Indiana hype, a lot of rat poison out there. I think it's time to sharpen the saw now, throw those warm fuzzies out the door, that sentimentalism. It's time to go play a game against a great opponent. When you watch these guys on tape, they really play the game with tenacity, intensity, physical, relentless, get after it. Coach Cristobal's done a great job with that program. We got to have a sharp edge going into this game. You know, you don't go to war with warm milk and cookies.
It's the final countdown.
Eddie Garrison putting together our intro. Don Fischer, the voice of the Hoosiers, on the call. Of course, you heard from Curt Cignetti there. You heard from Fernando Mendoza. Indiana tonight against Miami in the national championship game. And as I mentioned earlier, which I'll get more into later in the program, it is fitting, perhaps, that this national championship game comes on Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day, obviously his birthday, celebrating his birthday, but also his meaning within place, and not to in any way, shape, or form equate to sport what people went through throughout civil rights and the things that Dr. King went through. But there is a lesson in all of it throughout civil rights to know that strength comes within uniformity and not through individuality. And I think this Indiana football team exhibits exactly that, because this is a team that, yes, we have heard so much about it. They may be transfers, they may be older, more experienced players, but they are players that all know their individual job, and they trust the individual job of their teammate to do the same, and the collection of everybody doing that uniform process is what has Indiana on the doorstep now of the first national championship in the school's football history. Zach Osterman joins us now from Miami. He is with the Indianapolis Star and is the beat writer for Indiana football. Zach, first off, just set the scene, because somebody just told me that already down there they are telling people to start heading towards the stadium because of the president, coming to the game, and in addition to that, just the overall getting in aspect of it, that it already is starting to back up just a little bit. But what's the overall sense and feel in Miami?
Yeah, I mean, the sort of local feedback, I think even before anything else, was that Hard Rock Stadium is already not particularly well equipped for the big crowds, and that people needed to be kind of prepared for that. I will freely admit that we in the media are going to be getting a police escort up there. So, I mean, we're going to have to get there, I think, about 4 hours for the game, but we should be more all right than most in terms of getting in. But I think there's excitement around it. It's not quite like for example, the Peach Bowl, probably a little bit more like the Rose Bowl in the sense that the game is not in the same centralized location where all the fans are. Fans have in Atlanta kind of congregated downtown. That's where the stadium was. And so you did have, it felt like an SEC championship game, frankly, especially if like Georgia or Alabama was in town. This feels a little bit more like the Rose Bowl, where it's going to be, a lot of people kind of converging from parts a little more distant. Miami fans, because a lot of them are probably just coming from home, and Indiana fans, because you got some in South Beach. I think you got some up in Midtown, some downtown, some staying further up the coast toward the Isles and Fort Lauderdale. But I think I think the word has pretty well gotten out that people need to be prepared to get there early enough that I don't think anybody's going to get blindsided by traffic close to game time.
Okay, let's get to what Don Fischer and I were talking about earlier, Zach, but that is, from what you've been able to gather in talking with Curt Cignetti, listening to the players, and et cetera, as Indiana has done their research now on Miami, what is it about the Hurricanes that jumps out to you, or more specifically to what Indiana appears to be aware of about Miami?
I think the thing that you can't escape from Miami more than anything else is that pass rush. I know some people have said that statistically Indiana's pass rush is actually a little bit more productive or a little bit more consistent. I would argue there's not a more disruptive rush in the country, with Bain, Mesidor, Moton. I went back and watched some of that Ohio State film, and I know Ohio State's offensive line wasn't necessarily vintage this year, but it was terrifying at times just how chaotic they got, how hectic, they were sort of able to kind of make that front and really just mix things up and get Julian Sayin out of his comfort zone. Very similar, frankly, to what Indiana did to Ohio State. I think, we could talk a little bit about the other side of the line of scrimmage and the sides of Miami's offensive line, what they're good at, what they're not. Maybe not the most mobile, but very, very strong. They play tight splits. They'll kind of lean on you. But that Miami defensive line and that Miami pass rush specifically, I think that is where, for my money, the game is won and lost. If Indiana can control that, I think the path to a Miami win becomes just devilishly narrow. And if Indiana can't, that's when I think you start presenting Miami some opportunities to muck this game up, to turn it into something that looks a little bit like the Texas A&M game, like the Ohio State game, especially the Ohio State game, where Miami gets out ahead and Ohio State just has to spend too much time clawing back into the game to ultimately win it. I think that, that more than anything else, I'm watching that Miami defensive front versus Indiana's offensive line. And frankly, Indiana's offensive game plan. We've seen them go with 2 tight ends. We've seen them in this playoff go with 6 linemen and throw an extra lineman out there for some of their run sets. We saw that against Alabama. I think Indiana would do well to bring some of that back on the field tonight and just maybe try and take the legs out from under that pass rush, wear them down as the game goes on, and maybe by the fourth quarter, it's just not getting home.
Zach, earlier someone sent me a message that said, Curt Cignetti might be a great coach, but rather he's great at getting 25-year-olds to play in college football. What can be said to dismiss the theory, or to, I guess, the point of, look, these are all 5- and 6-year guys and productivity over potential, et cetera. What are the realities and the numbers for Indiana in terms of their experience versus others?
They are experienced, but they are not overly so. It's a little bit overplayed, I think, because people have looked for reasons why Indiana doesn't fit the mold of, what, in fairness, people have been, they mocked the blue chip ratio and all that. But listen, we had 20, 25 years of evidence, of sample size that said, if you didn't recruit at this level, if you didn't produce NFL players at this level, you probably weren't going to win a national championship. And we can go back to the 80s and the 70s, and we can look at your Georgia Techs and your BYUs and, some other teams that won it all back then that maybe weren't quite as talented, and maybe we're just entering a different era. I don't know, but I think people reached for Indiana's age as an explanation for why the Hoosiers, maybe were able to kind of defy that convention. They are older. They were not statistically the oldest team in this playoff, and I forget who was. A couple different people crunched the numbers, and I don't have them right in front of me. Forgive me. But they're not statistically the oldest team in this playoff. They do have some old guys. It's worth saying the oldest starters in this game are playing for Miami, not for Indiana. But I think because Indiana sort of embodies a lot of these overturned conventions in college football, that you need 3 or 4 years to flip a roster, that you need an elite level of talent to win at the top of the conference like the Big Ten or the SEC. That you can do what Kurt Cignetti has done in a program like IU. I think people have reached for the sort of most easily explainable factors, and age is undeniably one of those. I just don't think I think it has gotten overplayed at this point. I think just how old Indiana is.
The game itself, Zach, Indiana, by the way, Zach Osterman's our guest, Java House Peel and Pour guest line. Indiana has played in big games this year. At Oregon was huge. The Big Ten title game here was huge. The Rose Bowl, the Peach Bowl. Which one do you think, in terms of expectation, fan excitement, pressure, people doubting them, etc., which game or moment this year do you think has most prepared Indiana for this moment?
Probably the Ohio State game. I think we would have said the first Oregon game until we got to this playoff run. But I think the Ohio State game was the one that came with it. Number one, it was very 50-50 in that stadium. It was a dome environment, so the noise was trapped in, but it was, it wasn't like the Rose Bowl, it wasn't like the Peach Bowl, and it's not going to be that way tonight, in terms of it's not going to be heavily Indiana fans, but I don't think it's going to be heavily Miami fans either. I think it might be a 35-65, 40-60, 50-50 maybe even. I guess some of it will probably depend on who gets a hold of the lion's share of those sort of neutral corporate seats in the middle. But more in terms of the hype around the game, the intensity of the attention, the distraction, just all the things that could sort of shake Indiana away from what has made Indiana so good this season. And then, of course, the physical demands of that game. That was, I would argue that is the only other defensive front that Indiana has seen this season that is as good as the one they're going to see tonight with Caden Curry and Arvell Reese and Sonny Styles coming up toward the line of scrimmage and all that kind of stuff. I think both in terms of the physical test and also maybe in terms of the test of how you handle the buildup, how you handle the attention, how you handle the in-game adjustments, I think that Ohio State game is probably the most analogous experience so far this year.
Have you noticed any change at all, Zach? Any? And I'm not asking that rhetorically. I'm legitimately asking. Have you seen any change in Indiana's mood, looseness, tightness, focus, whatever it might be? I mean, this is such an uncharted territory for any program, really, but for Indiana specifically, and everything that goes into the commitments, the obligations, the media, all of it. Have you noticed any sort of change of demeanor of Indiana?
No, and to be honest, that was actually one of my biggest takeaways from the media day that they held here on Saturday. They had, basically all of both staffs and both teams over at the Miami South Beach Convention Center. And, I wouldn't say Indiana was too loose. They weren't arrogant. No one was making predictions or anything like that. But there was a sense that they just, that this team, you did not get the sense they were tense or tight or anxious at all. I think, I think Mike Nisley, my colleague, and I kind of got into an argument over this, a good-natured argument, of course, but an argument over this on our podcast yesterday, where I said, and Mike disagreed, that he felt this quite as palpably, that I thought there was some of that ahead of the Rose Bowl. Not a ton, but I thought it was tangible, especially just the anxiousness of the long layoff and wanting to get playing again, wanting to get back into that rhythm, being almost like annoyed more than anything else that they had to spend so much time waiting for between the Big Ten championship game and the start of the Rose Bowl, and how do they manage all that time off, and when do you start prepping for the actual game itself, and all these different considerations. I think the Peach Bowl and the national title game, this team has found that rhythm again. That sort of, this is okay. Maybe there's an extra day or two, but this is just a game week. It's another game. It's another opponent. Here's how we scout. Here's how we prepare. Here's how we recover from the last game. Here's how we get ready for the next one. And I think that it was tangible to me, and this may matter, it may not, we'll see, but it was tangible to me. I didn't sense Miami was nervous or anxious or overconfident or whatever. I don't know Miami as well, though. I know Indiana. I've been around this team all season. They were the same, in the sort of forward-facing build-up to this game that they have been all the way back to Old Dominion on August 31st or whatever that was. There is no tangible change.
What about from the Miami standpoint, Zach? Zach Osterman's my guest, Indianapolis Star, where you can read his work and his coverage of this game in Indiana all year long. He's on the Java House Peel and Port guest line. JavaHouse.com is the website. From the Miami standpoint, in talking and listening to Mario Cristobal and their players, was there anything aside from what you would expect them to say about did they tip the hand at all as to what their game plan or their angle that they're going to take with Indiana that jumped out at you?
No, again, I think you sort of feel this in an NCAA tournament setting too. And that's a little different, Final Four and national title game turn, because there's so little time that nobody's going to try and reinvent the wheel. But by the time you get to that point in the season, in my experience, if you are still playing, if you're still in a semifinal, if you're playing in a final, a title game, generally your attitude is a lot less about, here are all the things we have to worry about on the other side of the line of scrimmage. Here are all the clever ways we're going to, scheme against their pressures or against their run fits or against their receivers or their route combinations. And it's a lot more just sort of, hey, we trust what got us here. This is our identity. This is who we are. This is how we won, in Indiana's case, 15 games, in Miami's case, 13 games. Or maybe it's 14 now, I can't remember. But, this is how we got to this place, to this point. And we're not going to change who we are. We're going to, of course, build the game plan to fit this opponent's strengths as opposed to that opponent's strengths and whatever. But I think in the same way that Indiana didn't feel really affected by this game, you got a real sense that Miami just sort of said, listen, we are, we're a physical team. We're a tough team. We take a lot of our identity from our head coach, who, of course, was an offensive lineman at Miami. But it's really, I think it's worth saying, really tried to sort of like push away the old perceptions of the U and the U is back and all. Like, he's really, since he got to Miami, Cristobal has been very sort of like, no, this is about this team, this program, the identity of this group. And we're not talking about trying to be what we were in the 80s or what we were in the 90s. We're trying to talk about what we're going to be right now. And I think Miami has that mentality coming into this game of, we trust what got us here. We're tough. We're physical. We're strong. We're athletic. Obviously, they're playing at home. I think that's going to be an advantage for them. They haven't had to – I think they've been in a team hotel all week, but they've been using all their own facilities. They'll be in their own locker room tonight. All that stuff, all that familiarity will probably help. I don't think either of these teams is coming into this game thinking we are going to do something dramatically different to try and sort of out-strategize the opponent. I think there's a lot of, at this point, listen, the hay is in the barn. We are who we are. We believe in who we are. And we believe that's going to be good enough to win us the game tonight.
What percent of Hard Rock Stadium tonight do you believe will be wearing red?
Yeah, I mean, I'll be a little conservative and say I think maybe 35%, maybe 40%. I know there are some people who and I'm not smart enough to read ticket trends and things. I know there are some people who have said they think that the way that tickets have been moving, the cost, the places they've been purchased from, et cetera, suggest that Indiana fans might outnumber Miami fans. There is also, as I mentioned earlier, that huge chunk of neutral tickets, and you don't know, like basically corporate tickets, and you don't know who's going to wind up with those. Did that lean more toward Miami because we're in Miami, and maybe just like some local businesses and things bought some of those up long before they knew who was going to be in the game? I don't know. But I don't think I would be surprised if it is a true road atmosphere for Indiana. I think it is going to be tangible, the Indiana noise and the Indiana support in that stadium tonight.
Because my understanding is that basically from, I don't know, like Daytona South, it has been nothing but people wearing red in every bar and restaurant for like a 4-hour span throughout South Florida and Central Florida and North Florida, correct?
Yeah, and again, like it's not like Atlanta. Like I met a friend for coffee the afternoon of the Peach Bowl, an old high school friend who's a Georgia fan, and we were just walking around downtown, just catching up. And he was remarking the same thing I was. This feels like when Georgia's in town, when Alabama's in town. But that's different because, that game is built to be hosted by downtown Atlanta. You can get to downtown on the train in 15 minutes. There's tons of hotels. The stadium is right there. It's walkable. This is not that way. Like Hard Rock Stadium's up in Miami Gardens. Downtown Miami has horrible traffic, something I think a few of us have learned to our own expense in the last few days. And there's also the element too, like, I've had some people say to me, I see Indiana fans outnumbering Miami fans wherever I go. And it's sort of, well, I get that. But remember that a lot of the Miami fans aren't where you're going because they live here. They don't have to go out to eat every night because they're just at home. It'll feel different in the stadium. But again, I think we have seen Indiana fans. I would even go back to the regular season. You think about the extent to which Indiana fans probably outnumbered Purdue fans in West Lafayette. I was on the sideline at the end of the Maryland game. There were probably 15 to 20,000 Indiana fans in the stands at Maryland. Like, this fan base has absolutely kind of rallied behind the idea of following this team, all the way. Like it I love European soccer. It is a badge of honor to be part of the group of fans that follows a team home and away all year long. And the teams that have won European Cups and Champions Leagues, you'll have old timers who will tell you about, all the crazy travel stories about how they got to Berlin or how they got to Athens or how they got to Paris or whatever, bunking in the backseat of vans and stuff like that, sleeping on floors. Like, there's going to be, I think, win or lose tonight, I think there's going to be some of that with Indiana fans in years to come, that this team in particular and this run, this kind of march to the national championship game, there are a lot of people that are going to be talking about, just sort of throwing caution to the wind and saying, I'm following this train, however far it rides down the track.
Zach, what year did you join the Indianapolis Star?
2013.
Okay, because I apologize for asking it this way. My years all kind of run together. I know that you guys, do a variety of different beats. You have not been on the Indiana beat that entire time, correct?
I was hired to the IU beat, so
Okay.
I was working the IU beat for someone else for 24/7 Sports, and then before that I was in grad school and I was part-time and I worked a little IU, a little Notre Dame, a little Purdue. Back in college, of course, I covered Indiana for the IDS, but when I was hired, since I've gotten to the Star, I've only been Indiana.
So my apologies for that, but the reason I ask, and again, my timelines all get blurred. But I'm talking about and asking about, and I will give you the opportunity to opine on this as well. People that you're happy for this run, people that were diehard fans of Indiana or Indiana football that are no longer with us, or that are with us and you're just thrilled because they have been loyal through and through. And, I mentioned Bob Jenkins, for example. Several people have mentioned Bill Benner, our friend J-Law, Turnbuckle Bill that listens to the show. A number of different people have called in with their tribute, and somebody just pointed out, and I'm embarrassed that I did not think of this earlier. Terry Hutchins, who worked on the Indiana beat and was, wrote several books about Indiana, both from a basketball and football standpoint, and was truly a true gentleman and was always a good friend to me, and I think to those that worked with him, is another that, yes, there's a professionalism and an objectivity that comes with covering a beat, but Terry, who is a native Californian, became a Hoosier through and through, and I think he also would have loved to have covered this run. So certainly thinking of Terry Hutchins. Anybody that jumped out at you throughout your journey in covering this team, Zach, that you think about and you say to yourself, it is my professional obligation to simply cover the story, but I have to admit that I'm happy for this person?
Well, I think I will freely admit that there are probably more people than I can name, and I'm scared to even start listing them because I'll forget somebody. I think, that I wrote a little bit about this after the Big Ten championship game about different, people like I think anyone who knows Indiana football knows Mark Deal, whose father played with George Taliaferro on the 45 team, whose brother Mike was a captain on the 67 team that went to the Rose Bowl. Mark was in tears on the field at Lucas Oil Stadium, and he grabbed me and hugged me, and he said, finally, the third deal is going to a Rose Bowl, or, something like that. I don't remember exactly what he said. I talked to Scott Dolson, and he reminded me of Andy Hipskind, who was Indiana's chief medical officer for many years, who died of cancer a few years ago. I also think, it in terms of, people who are still with us, but I've had these conversations in text threads with old friends from college. And, I never was, because of my chosen sort of career path and my time at the IDS, I have no animosity at all toward IU athletics. It's given me, a career. It's given me some of my most rewarding professional moments. But I also was never really pulled into the idea of being an IU fan. But I have many friends who were. And I have so many friends who thought this moment would come, but they thought it would come in basketball. And that they never really thought that this would be a moment they could enjoy in football. And even last year, like I have friends who were even last season remained kind of skeptical, kind of, this will be a one season thing, but we're not getting latched onto it. I had these conversations, really the last two games in particular, just saying, listen, like, enjoy this. And it doesn't matter in some ways if they win or if they lose, because, I said this, I literally just said this to a few old fraternity brothers. Like, years from now, you will tell your kids you were at the Rose Bowl or the Big Ten championship game or the Peach Bowl. You will describe the noise that quite literally hurt my ears when D'Angelo Pons picked that pass off and ran it into the end zone against Oregon on the first snap of the game. And your kid's first question is not going to be, did they win it all? Your kid's first question is not going to be, was it worth it because they lost to Miami? It's going to be something like, tell me about it. What was it like? How special was that? And I've just sort of told people, try to enjoy this. Like, I said this to my friends. I said, I can't enjoy it the same way that you can. It's incredibly professionally rewarding for me to cover a story like this, for me to have a kind of a tale to try and chronicle the way we have these last 2 years. And I've had my moments. I won't lie. I'm not trying to make it myself. But I had a slightly emotional moment at the Peach Bowl, thinking about growing up, wanting to be a reporter covering SEC football and growing up going to Peach Bowls and remembering, all the big games that used to be played at the old Georgia Dome and thinking about this is where my career has kind of finally brought me full circle. But I can't enjoy it the way they can. And what I've just tried to tell people is I hope you drink it in, because stuff like this, especially this, only happens once. Maybe Indiana goes on a run here. They certainly have the resources. They've obviously got a head coach who's committed. Maybe Indiana is back on a stage like this in the not very distant future, but the first time always feels different, because it feels like the when everything is new and when everything seems unlikely. And there are, like I said, I could sit here and name you so many people that, Lee Butler and, just people who've been around IU football forever. And frankly, I think people like this too, who are probably in a weird way more connected with IU football than IU basketball for whatever reason. It just grabbed them in a different way, who thought that, their lot in life forever would be to be staring up at someone else's success. Connor Hitchcock, my good friend who's helped found Home Field Apparel in Indianapolis. There are genuinely so many people. And like I said, what I've told people is just enjoy this, because whether you win, whether you lose, you will only get to do it like this one time. And years from now, you may remember that you won a national title, but what you will remember more than anything else is all the stuff that happened along the way that you thought was impossible, that you thought was someone else's birthright. But it found you and it found your program, and you just try to enjoy it as much as you can.
One game for Indiana, 4 quarters. Zach Osterman, either way it goes, we'll have all of the coverage for it at the Indianapolis Star. Zach, good luck getting in the stadium with the police escort, and appreciate the time as always.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Zach Osterman joining us on the Java House Peel and Pour Gas Line. All right, we come back. He did remind me of somebody right there that is a story that I think speaks to a lot that you can appreciate and respect when it comes to this journey and this storyline. And I think Ditto's going to check in from a tailgate next.
You're listening to Query and Company on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Don Fischer on the call. I believe that was from the Rose Bowl against, was that the Ohio State game? Sorry, that was the Ohio State Elijah Surratt touchdown. I should have known that because he said back on top. They never trailed against Alabama. You heard mentioned there, by the way, from Zach, and I appreciate him saying so, about Andy Hipskin. And that got me thinking as well about, I did not know, and it would be disingenuous for me to say that I knew all of these guys to the level that others did that I knew in Indiana. But I did know Andy Hipskin. Clipper was his nickname in college because he gave haircuts. But he went on, did Andy Hipskin as a Bloomington resident and native, to attend Indiana and then go to medical school at Indiana, where he lived with my dearest friend, Kevin Turhan Donner. The two of them were roommates. And unfortunately, Turhan passed away. And then later, so too did Andy Hipskin from cancer. And Andy Hipskin loved Indiana football, loved it. And I think it was his dream job to work for Indiana, to help the athletes of Indiana. And he was loyal through and through to Indiana and was an inspiration for that football team and for all that knew him, really, in the way and the grace and the dignity with which he handled the adversity that came his way due to the illness. Jason Grumbacher was another guy that Andy Hipskin was very close with in college that was lost due to COVID during that terrible pandemic. And Grummy, as people who knew him at Carmel High School and Indiana University called him. That was his nickname. Those two were very close with one another, and they were also very close with a guy by the name of Andy Kleiman that I know from Carmel, who, when I would go to Indiana football games as a student, Andy Kleiman was the one guy that was down there always trying to get the student section like rallied around and tried to get them to do whatever they could to get the football team going. And Andy Kleiman, who became a deputy mayor of Indianapolis and is still an active part of the community here and is Hoosier through and through. And I think about Andy Kleiman because I think about the fact that he's got to be thinking of this game and his buddies, Jason Grumbacher and Andy Hipskin. And that's what it's all about, is just the camaraderie, the brotherhood of all of it. And joining us now, a guy that knows a little about that because he has been with his brothers that he played football with for years and has been talking to us throughout the course of this journey. Chris Ditto joining us on the program. And I'm hoping, Ditto, that you are like 9 deep in a tailgate.
You could be correct there. Almost to double digits. But, I mean, we did start early, and we've got to pace ourselves, Jake. What are we? It's almost 3 o'clock, so we're 5 hours to kick
5 hours
off.
some kick, right?
It's amazing. But what a Monday. Hell, what a freaking Monday we're having.
Okay, how red is the state of Florida right now in terms of, I guess you can make your own joke there, but in terms of, I hear that basically the entire southern half of Florida is cream and crimson.
Yes, I would guess if going into the stadium, I think it'll be 65% Indiana fans at a minimum. And I honestly think Miami fans have heard about how well IU fans have been traveling, and I just don't think they took it seriously. I think they're all walking around now in the tailgate lots shocked. I think they're all just like, oh, my gosh, we are outnumbered. And it's clear. It's very clear.
Now, are you at the stadium yet? Because my boots on the ground tell me that, like, it's a nightmare getting in because of the traffic and obviously the president and the security that goes in with it. Yeah. Your location is where? I'm
in a parking lot right outside of the stadium. We left our condo this morning at probably 10:30, and that was really motivated by me because I'm with a group of about 12 people, and originally they were like, let's leave at 1 o'clock, and that was probably 5 days ago. And then the longer we hear about the security and how tough and the traffic, it took us 25 minutes, no traffic. We got here, and we're so happy we left when we did because we're hearing the same kind of issues that, yeah, if you didn't leave around 10:30 or 11 you're going to get stuck in traffic, and we didn't, and we've been having a great time.
Okay, lastly, ditto. Your dad called in earlier, by the way, which was cool because we're having people call in of who they are rooting for, other than rooting for IU, like who they want it for. And he was talking about you and just what it meant to see you play for Indiana. So I got two-part question. The first is this, okay, on the serious side. Or on the joking side, I mean. Give me the guy, the former player, the teammate, the buddy of yours, whatever, that whenever you're trying to organize this and get everybody into the tailgate lots, it's like herding cats because there's one guy that just always goes rogue and you never know what's going to happen. Who is it?
Well, I don't know if you remember the name. There's a few. I can name a few, but Jamie Baisley was one of my roommates for 5 years. Love him like a brother. And just so you know, he stayed single till he was 45 years old. So that gives you an idea of how rogue he would go. And he's still rogue, although he now is happily married and has a wonderful wife and kids. But no, we've been down here for the last few days, and he was the guy that we'd be like, "Where's Baisley?" And you never knew. And it was great because we lived vicariously. Those of us who got married when we were 23 lived very vicariously through those types of guys that got married when they were 45. So,
fair enough.
Yeah. But saw so many guys last night at dinner, and like we talked about last week at the Peach Bowl and the Rose Bowl, and it's just been an incredible ride, incredible run, and everyone here I think is, as Indiana fans, they're just anxious. We're just anxious.
Okay.
It's one of those days where you're like, we don't want the day to end, but we also want the game to start.
So just to make sure, so Brett Law has stayed on the right side of the law the whole time, right?
Yes, yep. I saw Brett last night, and he was vertical. He was upright and doing great.
That's good.
Doing great.
That's good.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Lastly, on the serious side, Chris, and then we're going to let you go in and enjoy the game, and I appreciate the time throughout this run, but tell me the person or persons that win this thing, because I do think they're going to win. But either way, when the ball is kicked off and the national championship is underway, tell me the person that will make you a little bit emotional because you'll think about them and you'll think, this is for them.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably the guy that, that we all played for in the 90s was Bill Mallory. I think that's the most obvious answer for me because I know you talked to Kurt Mallory this week, and Kurt was incredible, and he was so honored to talk on behalf of his dad because, like what Kurt said, he became a bigger Indiana fan after he was fired, which is the kind of loyalty that Coach Mallory had along with all of his family. But for me personally, also my family, my teammates, the guys that we've lived Indiana football over the last 30 plus years. And I'll be watching the game with my wife. And I mean, we shed a tear after the Rose Bowl, and I think we'll be very, very emotional during this game. Along with, my kids aren't here. I wish they were, but they, my son's in Bloomington. He's on Kirkwood right now. He's very lucky to be
that you don't even go to bed till this time tomorrow. You know what I mean?
I've heard some of the offers to Fernando Mendoza and the team, some of the clubs that are going to open at 2:30 or 3 for them, and it could get really fun. Really.
All right. Well, keep an eye on Brett Law.
Yes, sir. Well, thanks as always, and go Hoosiers.
I appreciate it. Chris Ditto joining us down in Miami. We'll take a quick recess. We'll come back, put a tie on all of it, and hand it off to John, who is going to be down at the Bullseye Event Group tailgate in South Florida. Indiana National Championship Monday here on The Fan. in the game that probably saved the season for Indiana, because it looked like they were down and out in Iowa City after coming off that remarkable win against Oregon, and then they had a costly pick. Iowa got, I think, a field goal, but Indiana was down, and then Elijah Surratt with that touchdown, and Indiana goes on to win, and now here they are, 4 quarters away, 1 game away, 1 win from becoming the first team since Yale, I believe in 1895, to go 16-0 in college football, but more specifically, to be the undefeated national champion. JMV is down in South Florida. He has been having a lot of fun. You heard J-Law talking about the things they've been up to, but now he gets set for the broadcast that will lead you up to the game itself. Our sister station, WIBC, where you can hear the pregame beginning at 6:30. Pacers pregame at 6:30 on this radio station. JMV in Florida as the crossover, brought to you by Love Heating and Air, love-hvac.com, 317-353-2141. John, I'm assuming you got sunglasses on, right?
I do have sunglasses on. Now, Eddie, do I sound good? And do I look okay? I know there's just like a silhouette, a dark silhouette of me, but you see the beach and stuff in the background. I'm just checking in to make sure because I've done all this myself. I'm not a great engineer. I told everybody around here, Jake, I said, once I get all this crap plugged in, don't touch it. I don't care if you steal it, but don't touch it.
Don't come near it, right?
Because it may go haywire. But, Eddie, are we okay?
We sound good so far. You have a nice silhouette, although I can't put it on display for the Aquarium Company stream, but it's just kind of a little bit of a tease for those people coming up at 3 o'clock.
A little bit of a tease. That's what I am right here, Jake. A big old tease, buddy. Big old tease.
What percent of the stadium do you think is going to be Indiana fans? I've got people down there that sent me a thing saying Miami fans are now starting to show up, and I think it could be 50-50. Osterman said he thinks 60% Miami. That would surprise me because half the state of Indiana's down there, right?
I would be surprised if it's not 60% IU in there. Really surprised. You know, and people have been telling me down here that deal with tickets that they think it's going to be 70%. I'm just going with their expert opinion because I don't really know. You don't really know. And certainly the jackasses that are telling us they think they know, they don't either. But I would lean on those of the ticket industry that might have a pretty fair idea about it. And they're the ones consistently saying the last 2 days that the expectation is around 70. I don't think it'll be that high. I think it'll be noticeable. There's no doubt about that. And I think that's something, when you have a team, Jake, that's playing on their home field, getting dressed in their own locker room, kind of used to everything, not everything is really out of whack as it has been with IU. I mean, that's an advantage for IU when you're going to have that sound of the crowd behind you. That's my expectation tonight, around 60.
Yeah, now what's the temperature and what's the weather like?
Well, I'm not going to say anything about being cold because, you know, for Hollywood Beach, Florida, where I am right now, it's cold. Now, you guys are like 7 degrees back there, so I'm not going to say anything about being cold. But, yeah, it just got cloudy. And I'm right. The Atlantic is right behind me here, literally 20 feet away on Hollywood Beach. And it's got progressively colder. I think they said around 68, I think, today as a high. It'll be around mid-60s, lower 60s for the game later on tonight. Not bad. Not bad at all, I don't think, for football weather. Now, hey, Jake, are we going to take bets, odds on what time I get over there from here a little bit later on? I've got a driver that's going to come and pick me up, and he's coming to pick me up at 6:10, so there's no damn way I'm going after 6 o'clock here tonight. I hope our bosses understand that. Not a damn way in the world.
Just do the show from the car. Just pick it up, take it with you in the car.
Yeah. So, Kyle Kinnett secured a driver that's picking me up at 6:10.
I think you might be safe, John, because my understanding is – it's, to use your term, it's FUBAR right now, trying to get in there.
Yeah.
But, you know, obviously, and I understand it. I've been to the 500 where the vice president was. I've been to a 500 where former presidents were, never the sitting president. So that alone is going to be from a security standpoint, and then the traffic. But I think a lot of that might be weeded out. You might be on the smart play here, right? I'm going to guess if you're being picked up at 6:10 that you're in at 7:05.
You think so?
I'm probably way optimistic.
That'd be
I don't know. How far is it typically from – J-Law said it was about 25 minutes with no traffic. Is that right?
J-Law is sitting across from me right now. That's what I think, about 25 minutes. We've gone back and forth from Fort Lauderdale to here about 3 times, it seems. But, yeah, I think it's something like that.
All right, we'll see. I'm gonna be optimistic and say 7:05.
Yeah. Hey, Jake, man, this is going to be fun. It really is. I hope everybody – I know that if you're not an IU fan, you're probably going, man, I'm getting really tired of this. But there are certain moments when you cover sports, and you've known this being around here as long as you have, that are extra special, and we are living in one of those moments right here.
And this, of course, in the same stadium where the Colts won a Super Bowl, same one where the Colts lost one too, but nonetheless, very surreal, very bizarre. John, we'll throw it out to you in a couple of minutes. Have fun with the broadcast, and good luck getting in, all right?
You got it, pal. Thanks, Jake.
Okay, so later tonight, I never thought I'd see it. I never thought we'd say it, but Indiana's going to play for a national championship in college football. And for all of those that called in, for those that were thinking about and tributing for this, and for those that don't have a rooting interest, I hope you can enjoy the game, and we will talk about it, break it down tomorrow. And should Indiana win the game, then you can be assured that we will be talking plenty about that tomorrow. As a matter of fact, the predominance of that game tomorrow.
What's your score prediction, Jake? I've got IU winning 27-20.
I'm past the point of doubting Indiana. I do think that I saw the over-under's 47.5. So
and
you're
the
right
spread
at
is 8.5.
The spread's gone down, though, right? I thought it's gone down to 6.5 now.
It could have. Last one I saw this morning was 8.5.
A little bit.
Okay.
I think Indiana does what Indiana does. I think they get an early lead, and then they just hold on from there. I do think Miami's very good defensively. I don't think Indiana's going to have the wide-open style of offense that we've seen. But I will say 20 – what'd you say, 27-20?
27-20.
Okay, I'll say that defense is awfully good. But I'll say 31-23, Indiana wins. Either way, we will talk about it tomorrow. We will break it down, and hopefully we will be celebrating. But for all of you who called in and participated today, I appreciate you listening. We will talk to you tomorrow. And as always, I appreciate you listening to Query & Company.